Welcome to the Alaska Weather Show. I'm meteorologist Peter Chan, coming to you from the National Weather Service on this Thursday afternoon, February 17th, 2022. And we do this each day as part of a unique partnership with Alaska Public Media. And we thank you for their help in allowing us to provide this service to you. And if you would like additional weather information, you may go to online to weather.gov. It's a point and click forecast based on a map there that's showing the continental U.S. with Alaska and Hawaii off there on the lower left. And you can go anywhere in the country and click on an area. You may have friends or family there and check up on the latest weather conditions. Just taking a glance at the map there this afternoon, we have a winter storm working its way up through the Midwest. Winter storm warnings across parts of Missouri on up through central Illinois into southern lower Michigan. Severe weather in the south, a couple tornado watches, parts of Tennessee down into Mississippi and Alabama. And blizzard warning up there in far northwest Minnesota and eastern North Dakota. So there's a lot of information you can glean from here, and if you'd like, check it out there, weather.gov. Well, here in the weather headlines, we continue to see a parade of North Pacific lows that'll occasionally pass up through the Bering Sea and the Gulf. And this pattern is going to continue right up through the end of the month into early March. And while at this present time we don't see any one particularly really strong storm, it's just going to keep a steady flow of milder air that's going to spread north and northeastward into the state, as well as occasional bouts of moisture. And when that moisture gets inland into the colder air, it falls as heavier accumulating snow, and areas in transition could see a mix of wintry mix of some freezing rain and sleet, and then a transition to just plain old rain, especially along the coastal areas where you get the milder temperatures along areas from, say, the Alaska Peninsula up through the Panhandle and along the Gulf Coast there. But otherwise, avalanche warning remains in effect for Hatcher Pass into Friday. Some heavier snow falling there today and tonight will keep that avalanche threat going. Winter storm warning is in effect for the eastern Alaska Range, and I'll show you that map in a moment. But overall, we're going to see above normal temperatures and bouts of precipitation across much of Alaska here over the next couple of weeks. And looking at the hazardous weather map here with the current watches, warnings, advisories, we have wind chill advisories in effect out there along the west side of the Seward Peninsula, including St. Lawrence Island, where some wind gusts of 40-50 miles an hour will create wind chills as cold as 45 below zero tonight and into Friday morning. Also, there will be some pretty chilly wind chills, perhaps down around 50-55 below there along the Arctic coast, especially Prudhoe Bay on over to Kaktovik. And then the center part of the state, especially south of the Brooks Range, we have widespread winter weather advisories in yellow, where additional, mainly light accumulations of snow, a few inches of snow on top of what has already fallen, and a winter storm warning in effect for the eastern Alaska Range, and that would include Isabel and Mentasta passes, as well as Black Rapids, where locally over a foot of snow could fall, along with some blowing and drifting snow. And that's total as to what has fallen today, as well as tonight into at least Friday morning and afternoon. And as I mentioned, there's that avalanche warning for Hatcher Pass there north of Anchorage. The precipitation, at least up there in the mountains, has been pretty heavy. Upwards to near a foot is possible through tonight. So that'll keep that avalanche threat going around Hatcher Pass. And then winter weather advisory, Talkeetna seeing mainly snow, but as you get down toward Wasilla, Palmer, it's been more of a mix or just gone over to some rain. Same thing in the Anchorage area. It's been mainly just plain old rain with temperatures above freezing. And then there is one little winter weather advisory for the north end of the Panhandle for White Pass. 3 to 5 inches of snow could fall tonight into Friday morning there. Otherwise, Haines, Yakutat could pick up an inch or two of sloppy snow tonight into Friday morning before it mixes with and tries to change over to rain. Otherwise, the rest of the Panhandle is looking at primarily rain. Here are a few of the webcams, FAA webcams. We're going to go way up to Barrow, Utqiagvik, mostly cloudy, 14 below this afternoon. A few breaks in the cloud, or at least trying to break there. Black Rapids along the east side of the Alaska Range. Winter storm warning remains in effect there, as well as for Isabel and Metasta passes. There'll be some tough going driving through that area. And then north of Anchorage, Wasilla, cloudy with light rain, a little bit of fog, 34 degrees. Again, some milder temperatures have crept up into at least the lower Susitna, Matsu Valley area there. You have to kind of get further east along the Glen Ellen Highway before it stays mainly snow, and that's where Gulcano is seeing some light snow and fog with a temperature of 24 degrees at mid-afternoon. Looking at the precipitation forecast on Friday, you can see the bulk of the precipitation is going to be shifting eastward along the northern Gulf Coast into the Panhandle. Perhaps an inch of liquid equivalent precipitation will fall there in the Panhandle for Friday into early Saturday. But by the time we get into Saturday, notice the precipitation does let up statewide, though there is another push that's it'll be a little lighter, pushing into the southwest coast there around west of Dillingham. And we'll see another push of moisture, especially late in the weekend, early next week, as another low lifts up out of the North Pacific and crosses there through the southeast portion of the Bering. All right, let's look at the satellite imagery, and we can see extensive cloud cover across most of the state, with exception of the far north and areas of the west-northwest. You can see south-central areas along the Gulf, up through the Alaska Range into the Panhandle are cloudy, with areas of snow where the air is colder in the interior, and that transition to mixed precipitation, then primarily rain along coastal areas of the Gulf. And even looking out there, you can see kind of that counterclockwise circulation there north of Adak in the lower central Bering Sea. And here we have that low this afternoon with a frontal boundary along it, with a current wave of precipitation working its way through along just west of the Alaska Range, through the Alaska Range, and down in through south central portions, especially interior where it's cold enough it's more of snow or a wintry mix. Overnight, early Friday morning, there'll be a weak area low pressure around the Kenai. Another one back out there just northwest of St. Paul. And as we go into Friday, we'll see a couple areas of weak low pressure work their way eastward. One that just kind of lags around Prince William Sound, but then one that pushes into the southern Yukon. And another one back there toward the southwest coast, the lower, say, Kuskokwim Delta, and yet another low southwest of the western Aleutians. And by Saturday, the frontal boundary there across south central and the northern Panhandle weakens, but then another system is out there toward the west. So Friday morning, we're looking for lows to generally stay above freezing in the Panhandle and creeping upward there in south central areas, so it'll be relatively mild. Daytime highs above freezing on Friday across most of the area, with some lower 40s in the Panhandle, including Kodiak, and then maybe slightly cooler by Saturday morning, getting a little bit back below freezing there south central areas, but generally still above freezing the southern half of the Panhandle. And temperatures Saturday afternoon still could be up around freezing there at Anchorage, and certainly above that as you get further south and trailing down through not just the Alaska Peninsula, but much of the Panhandle. The cold temperatures are going to begin to relax there across the far north, the Arctic coast. Not quite as cold as what it has been the past week. Still, though, 20s with some 30s below. And then daytime highs below zero along and north of the Brooks Range, primarily there, the North Slope. And Saturday morning lows, though, could get back down 20s and 30s below there along the North Slope Arctic coast. Not as cold, though, as going up the Yukon River in the vicinity of Fort Yukon. Fort Yukon had the state's low temperature this morning at 46 below. And as we look at the southwest, we expected temperatures there to be creeping upward, especially along Bristol Bay and the west arm of the Alaska Range. Temperatures should get above freezing, even lower 40s as you get out through the Aleutians. And then Saturday morning, temperatures still near, a bit below zero as you creep up the Yukon Valley, but the Kuskokwim Valley should see temperatures in the 20s. And highs still near or certainly above freezing as you go down along the length of the Alaska Peninsula and into the Aleutians. Here, I want to show you is the temperature outlook, the 6 to 10 day, as well as the 8 to 14 day. This is going to take us from February 23rd through the beginning of March, but notice the high probability of above normal temperatures, especially centered on the southwest third of the state. So this means we could see temperatures again well above freezing. Some areas maybe even getting into the 40s there across the southwest into the Alaska Peninsula and the Aleutians, and that trend continues for the end of the month into early March. A widespread area of warmer air will be pressing northward, even up to the Brooks Range and Arctic coast, the North Slope area, I think centered around the 25th, 26th of the month. And here's the precipitation outlook. Above normal precipitation there across the southwest, the 23rd through the 27th. And we'll see it maybe shift a little bit towards south central areas centered around Cook Inlet and the Kenai, February 25th through March 3rd.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Well, it's time again now for your aviation weather. And looking at conditions across the state, the main weather feature for Friday morning will be an area of low pressure along the Kenai, Prince William Sound area, and some moisture that's spilled over the Alaska Range up through the Mat-Su Valley. Cook Inlet will spread eastward along the northern Gulf Coast and then into the Panhandle as we head into later Friday and early Saturday. Meanwhile, another little area of low pressure will be passing just north of St. Paul and then moving into the southwest coast in the vicinity of the Kuskokwim Delta, and that will also spread some lighter precipitation back in through the southwest. So we expect IFR conditions generally prevalent along the Yukon from the central interior down across the Alaska Range through much of the Gulf Coast into portions of the Panhandle and then out along the west coast into the central Bering Sea. And for Friday afternoon, we still see widespread IFR conditions along the southwest coast, southwest interior, Alaska Range up through the Yukon River along the Alcan border in the east central part of the state, and then down along parts of the Panhandle, especially the intercoastal mountains. And for Saturday morning, still IFR conditions generally along the Alaska Range, also a bit to the west, as well as east. We're there along the Alcan border and covering a good portion, especially of the inner channels and intercoastal mountains of the Panhandle, as well as further southwest out along the eastern half of the Aleutians. And for Saturday afternoon, IFR conditions linger over the Alaska Range, but do diminish across the mainland and much of the Panhandle, though we do see additional IFR conditions there along the southwest coast, parts of the central Alaska Peninsula and down there into the eastern Aleutians. As far as past conditions for Friday, Anaktuvuk as well as Atikin there in the north will see VFR conditions. Further south, though, you're going to encounter IFR conditions along and as you fly south of the Yukon River and through the Alaska Range, and this would include Lake Clark and Merrill being IFR. Rainy Pass also will see IFR conditions, as will Windy Pass, rounding out through the central Alaska Range. And then further east, Isabel will see IFR conditions. And Mentasta may see an interval of MVFR conditions early Friday, but otherwise IFR conditions are expected there. And generally IFR conditions going across the Copper River Basin. As we drop down near Tanita, there could be an area of MVFR in the east entrance, but more in the way of IFR conditions, especially the west entrance of Tanita. And for Portage Pass, we expect IFR conditions to hold there on Friday, especially there up through Prince William Sound. And then Chilkoot and White in the northern Panhandle will also tend to hold on to IFR conditions on Friday. Freezing levels do bump up across the Gulf from the northern Gulf Coast, 2,000 feet, rising to 6,000 and 8,000 feet as we get from the south central Gulf to the North Pacific interface. The surface freezing line generally runs along the Gulf Coast and then back across parts of the southwest coast there, Dillingham on out westward into say the lower central Bering. Icing conditions are the greatest threat will exist Friday morning across Cook Inlet on up into the Susitna Valley, Kenai, Prince William Sound, but that between 3,000 and 13,000 feet. Shifting eastward, though, the moisture during the day and between 6,000 and 16,000 feet there over the outer and lower portion of the Panhandle, and then an area of between 3,000 and 11,000 foot isolated moderate turbulence, especially north of the central Aleutians. Strongest jet stream winds 30,000 feet. We have a core of around 100 knot winds coming in, southwest winds there into the northern central Panhandle. Also wind max to 130 knots from the west-northwest cutting across the tip of the Alaska Peninsula. Coming down to 9,000 feet, a broad area of 60 to as high as 85 knot winds just inland from the Panhandle and through British Columbia. And then also we have an area of winds of 50 to as high as 80 knots from the tip of the Alaska Peninsula into the central Aleutians. And dropping down to 3,000 feet, we see a few weak low-level low-pressure circulations along the west southwest coast there in the vicinity of the Kuskokwim Delta, Prince William Sound, and then into the southern lower Yukon. And strongest winds are out across the central portion and just southwest of the central Aleutians. So turbulence, considerable moderate turbulence will be possible across parts of the Alaska Range, Copper River Basin, especially just south of the Brooks Range, northwest coast, Seward Peninsula, extending back out along the Alaska Peninsula into the at least central Aleutians between the surface and 4,000 feet. Also, some pockets of moderate turbulence possible in the Panhandle up through central and southern sections of the surface and 6,000 feet. So that does it for your flight weather. And as always, check the latest conditions and forecast. And if you are able to get out, have a safe flight.
Hi Star Fam, wish Galileo a happy birthday. 457 years ago on February 15th, famous Italian astronomer Galileo Galilei was born. This week is the snow moon, the full moon of February, so get out and watch the skies like our favorite astronomer. Grab some binoculars and head outside to look at the moon. In the 16th century, it was thought the moon was a perfect sphere, and when the moon is full, it can look pretty flat. But if you look at it day after day, you'll notice the darkness moving across its face. If the moon was smooth, the shadow would be smooth too, but through binoculars, you can really see that the edge of that shadow is craggly, meaning that the moon has mountains. This is how Galileo realized the moon had, quote, chains of mountains and depths of valleys, just like features we find on Earth. So get out there and get a little Galileo adventure and keep looking up.
Have you ever been to the beach and noticed litter like plastic bottles or foam takeout containers on the sand? Or maybe you've been to a river or bay where there's a bag or a car tire stuck in the mud on the shore, or a bunch of deflated balloons that say happy birthday floating in the water? All of that junk in the water or on the shoreline is considered marine debris. It's anything solid and man-made in the ocean or Great Lakes that is not supposed to be there. And anything people use every day can become marine debris if they don't dispose of it properly. And I mean anything. The most common items we find when we do shoreline cleanups are plastics. But we also find rubber, cloth, glass, metal, and paper litter. Sometimes the debris is so tiny, like a plastic microbead from your face wash, that you can barely see it in the water. Marine debris is more than just trash in the ocean. Sometimes fishers lose their gear like fishing traps, nets, or fishing line, and it continues to drift through the water, catching animals for a long time. We call that derelict fishing gear, and it's marine debris. Have you ever seen an old boat left behind on a shoreline? Abandoned and derelict vessels are also marine debris. So let's review. Anything we use every day can become marine debris if we don't dispose of it properly or if it goes into the water by accident. Marine debris can be very small or can be very big, and anything in between. But most importantly, marine debris is one of the biggest pollution problems facing the world's oceans and waterways today.
How does marine debris impact the ocean, animals, and me? Would you want to swim in a beach littered with trash? Of course not. And the animals who live in the ocean don't either. The difference is, they don't have a choice. Marine species often get tangled in debris, from fishing nets to six-pack rings. If they get caught, they could get injured or even die. And even if they don't get entangled, many animals mistake plastic debris for food and eat it. This fills their stomach with junk they can't digest. Debris can also damage important habitats, like coral reefs, by breaking or smothering them. Corals serve as the base of the marine ecosystem, and impacts here can be felt all the way to you and me. Plus, plastics have harmful chemicals in them. Fish eat plastic, we eat fish. The question is, can those chemicals harm us? Marine debris also hurts the economy. It costs a lot of money to clean up, and people don't want to go to dirty beaches. Boats and ships could run into large pieces of debris too, or get their propellers tangled. We need the ocean and everything in it, and the ocean needs us to keep it free of debris. What can we do about marine debris?
A lot of the trash that's in our ocean is plastic.
And that marine debris is hurting our environment, economy, and health.
The problem will only get worse.
Unless we change the way we consume and dispose of products. There are solutions.
And together, we can prevent litter from ending up in the ocean. Some people might say,
well, I'm just one person, so I can't make a difference.
But that's just not true.
If each person who creates trash, and that's just about everyone, took action, it would add up to a whole lot of change.
So what can we do?
Well, the ultimate solution is prevention. And we need to keep that as our highest priority.
We can reduce, reuse, and recycle to keep debris out of the ocean in the first place.
You can bring your own shopping bag, drink out of a reusable bottle, and participate in things like a shoreline cleanup.
Join a group cleaning up the beach, or grab some friends and clean up your street. It's easy.
Be more conscious of how many disposable plastic items you're using. And if you do,
where are you putting it? In the trash can? Whoops. Or in the recycling bin?
So here's the challenge. The next time you finish using a throwaway item, a bag, a bottle, or utensil, answer the question, where is this going? Because ultimately, when you throw stuff away, there really is no away. It has to go somewhere.
So keep asking yourself this important question.
How will you keep your trash from becoming marine debris?
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back, and we'll start with the sea ice edge, and we have rather extensive ice there out through the central northern Bering up along the west coast. But again, temperatures, especially along the southwest coast and the edge of the ice, are relatively mild in terms of air temperature and water temperature. So any areas of ice that break free off of the main pack ice will have a tendency to melt and not refreeze. Looking at winds that we have coming up here along the panhandle for Friday, we have winds of 20 to 25 knots through the inner channels and may gust as high as 40 knots through Lynn Canal, with waves running around 5 feet. The outer coast, generally west winds around 30 knots, waves 12 to 14 feet. Saturday, winds come down southeast to south across the inner channels, 10 to 15 knots, waves running a couple feet, maybe a little higher there toward Metlakatla, Dixon entrance. Otherwise, westerly winds turning northwesterly in areas at 25 knots or so, and waves running right around 10, 11 feet. For the northwestern Gulf, the strongest winds will be there south of Cordova in the open waters and southeast of the Kenai Peninsula, southwest to west at 30 knots. Waves around 10 to 12 feet. North winds 15 knots, Prince William Sound, about 2-footers there. And in lower Cook Inlet, west to southwest winds around 20 knots and waves about 5 feet. For Saturday, winds do come down over the ice-covered areas up toward Anchorage there of Cook Inlet as well as Prince William Sound. And winds variable there at only 10 knots. Strongest winds running around 30 to 35 knots from the mouth of Cook Inlet to just northeast of Kodiak and southeast of the Kenai Peninsula out over the northwestern Gulf with waves 9 to 10 feet. For Kodiak Island and on the Pacific side of the Alaska Peninsula, winds will be southwesterly 25 to 30 knots, waves 5 feet through Shelikof Strait, but upwards of 12, 13 feet as you get well offshore there of the main area of the peninsula. And then north of Cold Bay in the open water, southwest winds to 30 knots and waves 12 feet. By Saturday, winds continue southwest-west around Kodiak Island at 30 knots, turn a little more southerly as you get down towards Sand Point, and then southeasterly on the Bering side to 35 knots north of Cold Bay. and with waves there up around 9 feet or so on the Bering side. Across the eastern Aleutians, generally southwest winds 25 to 30 knots across the eastern half. Waves right around 13, 14 feet on the North Pacific side, 9 to 12 feet on the Bering side, and then further westward, west of Adak, southeast to east winds 30 knots, waves 12 to 15 feet. Winds pick up on Saturday as another system is approaching. We see south winds building to 40, 45 knot gales throughout the eastern and central Aleutians, waves building up around and just over 20 feet on the North Pacific side, and 10 to 15 feet generally speaking on the Bering side. And looking at the ice-covered areas of the southwest coast up through Norton Sound, winds will be out of the northeast to north around 20 to 30 knots. Again, we're not expecting a lot of ice movement, and again, any ice areas that do breakaway will have a tendency there along the edge of the pack ice to melt and not redevelop. St. Paul, St. George, southwest winds to 30 knots, waves 14 feet. A little bit more of a mixed bag of winds come Saturday. Southern areas around Nunavik Island, southeasterly to 25 knots, increasing to 40 knots around St. Matthew, but east to northeast from Norton Sound to just south of St. Lawrence. And along the Arctic coast, there will be an area of high pressure centered up over the Arctic Ocean, just northwest of the Arctic coast. So we expect winds to be out of the northeast 15 knots, Utqiagvik to Kaktovik. And then along the northwest coast, look for northeast to north winds picking up 25 to 30 knots through the lower Chukchi Sea and Bering Strait. And on Saturday, winds turn more northeasterly there in response to where the high center is positioned in the Arctic Ocean. Around 15 knots along the Arctic coast and 20 to 25 knots dropping down through the lower Chukchi Sea and then on the west side of the Seward Peninsula north of St. Lawrence. And checking the weather map here for late to this Thursday night into early Friday morning, there's a weak low center near the Kenai and another one out over the Bering approaching, just passing to the north of St. Paul. And as we go into Friday, there'll be a couple of weak low centers extending from the southwest coast near the lower Kuskokwim Delta through Prince William Sound to the southern part of the Yukon. Areas of snow along that and to the south, some mixed precipitation, rain along the coast, and another system approaching up there, the western Aleutians, come Saturday. So thank you for watching the show tonight, and join me again tomorrow.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.